If the man in the driver's seat had not looked at me through the rearview mirror and said just one sentence, I would not be alive today. Not because of an accident, not because of illness, but because the person I trusted most had already decided that I should disappear quietly. Do not open the door, he said. Please, just stay where you are. Give me 5 minutes. 5 minutes. At that moment, I thought I had made the worst mistake of my life. It was almost midnight. We were parked near the far end of Heathrow Airport. The lights were dimmer there. The pavement was empty, and I was sitting in the back seat of a locked car, holding my husband's wallet in my hands. I had come to the airport for one simple reason. I thought my husband had forgotten something important, something harmless, something a good wife would rush to return. I did not know that the wallet was not forgotten. I did not know it was bait. I remember my fingers tightening around the door handle. I remember my heart pounding so loudly I thought the driver could hear it. I remember asking him, in a shaking voice, why he would not let me out. He did not answer straight away. He just kept watching the darkness outside the car, as if he were waiting for something terrible to step forward. You will understand very soon, he said. And if you trust me now, you might still walk away from this. Trust him, a stranger, in the middle of the night, when every instinct in my body was screaming to run. Those 5 minutes felt longer than my entire marriage, and when they ended, everything I believed about my life collapsed at once. Before I go any further, I need to ask you something. If you want to hear how this ends, if you want to understand how close I came to being erased by the people closest to me, comment the number 1 right now. Do not wait. Because what happened next still makes my hands shake when I think about it. Before that night at the airport, my life looked exactly like the kind of life people describe as safe, quiet, orderly, respectable. The sort of marriage that does not raise questions at dinner parties. The sort of husband neighbours greet with a smile. The sort of woman people assume has nothing dramatic to tell. My name is Emily Carter. I live in a modest semi-detached house in Surrey, not far from London. Tree-lined streets, polite neighbours, the same faces on the morning train. Oliver and I had been married for 4 years. Not the kind of marriage you see in films. There were no grand declarations, no shouting matches, no passionate reconciliations. In England, we do not fall apart loudly. We dissolve quietly, if at all. Oliver worked in finance. He wore well-cut suits and spoke carefully chosen sentences. He was punctual. He sent birthday cards to his mother. He never forgot to say thank you to waiters. People trusted him instinctively. When I introduced him as my husband, I often noticed the same reaction, a small nod, a look of approval, as if I had made a sensible choice. And I believed that too. I worked part-time from home. Nothing glamorous, administrative work, invoices, spreadsheets, the kind of job that keeps the household moving without drawing attention to itself. I liked routine. Morning tea, the radio on low volume, dinner at roughly the same time each evening. Some people might call it boring. I called it peaceful. If there were cracks, I did not see them, or perhaps I did not want to. Oliver was not cruel. He was not unfaithful in the obvious way. There were no lipstick marks, no suspicious phone calls taken in another room. He was simply distant in a way that felt normal. Busy, preoccupied, tired, and I told myself that was what adulthood looked like. Friends used to ask me whether I ever worried, whether I ever checked his phone, whether I ever wondered what went on in his head. I always laughed. I am not that kind of wife, I would say. I trust my husband. And I meant it. I had been raised to believe that suspicion was a form of disloyalty, that love meant choosing not to question, that a good marriage was built on silence as much as honesty. If Oliver came home late, I reheated dinner. If he cancelled plans, I told myself work must be stressful. If he seemed distracted, I gave him space. I thought that was kindness. Looking back now, I understand something painful. I had confused calm with safety and politeness with truth. Our house reflected that illusion perfectly. Neutral colours, nothing too personal, nothing too revealing. Photographs on the mantelpiece showed us smiling in sensible places. A weekend in Bath, a Christmas market in Munich, a wedding photo where we both looked composed rather than joyful. I thought that was maturity. At night, Oliver often fell asleep quickly. I would lie awake beside him, listening to his breathing, thinking how fortunate I was to have a husband who did not create drama. I had no idea that drama was not absent, it was simply waiting. There were moments, now that I replay them, that feel different. A look that lasted a second too long, a question answered too quickly, a habit of keeping his wallet in his jacket pocket rather than on the table. But at the time, none of it felt important enough to name. That is the danger of a quiet life. It teaches you not to listen too closely. On the evening everything began to unravel, nothing felt unusual at first. Oliver mentioned an unexpected meeting in Manchester. He packed a small bag. He kissed my forehead. He told me not to wait up. "Do not stay awake for me," he said. "I will be back before you know it." I watched him leave from the doorway, feeling faintly proud of myself for being so understanding. If someone had told me then that my trust was the very thing that would be used against me, I would have smiled politely and said they were being dramatic. It was nearly 11 when I found the wallet. I had already washed the mugs from our evening tea. The house was quiet in the particular way it always was after Oliver left for a trip. Not lonely, just empty. I was about to switch off the lamp in the living room when I noticed something dark wedged between the sofa cushion and the armrest. At first I thought it was the television remote. Then I saw the lever, Oliver's wallet. I picked it up slowly, already feeling a small knot forming in my stomach. It was heavier than usual. Inside were all the things he never went anywhere without. His bank cards, his driving license, his work ID, a folded receipt from a cafe near his office. Everything. For a moment I simply stood there, staring at it, trying to make sense of how it could still be in our living room. Oliver was supposed to be on his way to Heathrow by now. He had mentioned how tight the timing was, how he needed to be early for security. Without his wallet, he would not even get past the first desk. I felt a flicker of irritation, not anger, just that quiet annoyance you feel when someone you love makes a careless mistake and you have to fix it. I checked the time, 11:12. His flight was scheduled just after 1 in the morning. There was still time, barely. I reached for my phone and called him. Once, twice, 3 times. It rang until it stopped. I tried again, straight to voicemail. I told myself he was probably driving, that his phone was on silent, that he would call back as soon as he parked. But he did not. I sent a short message. "I have your wallet, call me." The message showed as delivered, not read. That was when the unease began to creep in. I paced the living room, the wallet still in my hand. I imagined him at the terminal, patting his pockets, realizing something was wrong. I imagined the stress on his face, the sharp breath he took when he panicked. I had always been the practical one, the one who fixed things quietly before they became problems. So I made a decision that felt natural, automatic. I would take the wallet to him. I do not drive at night. The glare of headlights makes my vision blur, and Oliver knew that. He had insisted on taking the car himself earlier. For a brief moment I considered waiting, leaving the wallet on the table, letting him deal with it. But then I thought of him stranded, missing his flight, calling me later, frustrated and tired. I did not want that. I opened a ride app and entered the destination, Heathrow Terminal 5. As I waited for a driver to accept the trip, I wrapped the wallet in my scarf and held it close to my chest as if it was something fragile. The app pinged. A driver had been assigned. Mark, Black Saloon, 5 minutes away. I pulled on my coat, slipped my feet into my shoes, and checked my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked exactly as I always did, tired, ordinary, a woman stepping out late for a sensible reason. Before leaving, I glanced once more at my phone. Still no missed calls, no reply. I told myself not to overthink it. I had always prided myself on not being dramatic. I locked the front door behind me and walked down the driveway, the cold night air sharp against my face. The street was quiet. Most of the houses were dark. When the car pulled up, I felt a small wave of relief. Good, this would be quick, in and out, problem solved. As I opened the back door and slid into the seat, I had no idea that this simple act of kindness was the first step into something far darker. Before we go on, pause for a moment. If you have ever gone out of your way to help someone you love, even when it inconvenienced you, type the word here in your mind. Because that instinct is exactly what was used against me. If only I had known this was not a careless mistake. The car smelled faintly of clean fabric and something citrus. Not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. I closed the door behind me and settled into the back seat, still holding Oliver's wallet against my coat. The engine started smoothly. The radio stayed off. Mark did not ask how my evening was. He did not comment on the weather. He did not make the small talk most drivers use to fill the silence. He simply pulled away from the curb and drove. At first, nothing felt wrong. The streets near my house were quiet, as they always were at that hour. Rows of houses passed by, their windows dark, their gardens neat and invisible in the night. I watched the familiar turns without really thinking, left at the corner shop, straight past the closed pub, out towards the main road. My phone lay face down on my lap. Every few seconds I turned it over, half expecting to see Oliver's name light up the screen. It never did. We joined the motorway, the hum of tyres changing as the road widened. The orange glow of streetlights stretched ahead of us in long, even intervals. I told myself to relax. This was what late-night travel looked like. Empty lanes, steady speed, nothing dramatic. Mark drove carefully, almost too carefully. He stayed well within the speed limit, changed lanes early, left a wide distance between us and the car ahead, even when there was hardly any traffic. I noticed his eyes in the mirror, not constantly, just often enough that I became aware of it. Each time our eyes met, he looked away immediately. I shifted slightly in my seat and adjusted my coat. The wallet pressed uncomfortably against my ribs. We passed a sign for the airport, 20 miles. I expected him to move into the lane marked clearly for Heathrow. Instead, he stayed where he was. Perhaps he knew a faster route. Perhaps the sat-nav had suggested something different. I did not say anything. The motorway felt larger now, the spaces between cars wider, the darkness on either side deeper. Occasionally, another vehicle passed us, its headlights briefly flooding the interior of the car with white light before disappearing again. Each time I blinked, my eyes taking a moment to adjust. Mark's hands remained steady on the wheel. I became aware of how quiet it was. No music, no voice from the radio, no vibration from my phone, only the engine, the road, my own breathing. I tried to distract myself by looking out of the window. Industrial buildings slid past, then open stretches of land, fences, fields, the occasional warehouse, its lights long since switched off. This did not look like the route I remembered. I told myself that airports were surrounded by roads like this, service roads, access points, places most passengers never noticed. Still, I checked the time again. 11:46. We should have been closer by now. I leaned forward slightly and glanced at the sat-nav screen mounted near the dashboard. The map was zoomed out, too far to read clearly from where I sat. I considered asking him how long it would take. The words formed in my mind, then dissolved before reaching my mouth. There was something about the silence that made me hesitate. Not threatening, just closed. Mark slowed as we approached a long curve in the road. The headlights swept across an empty stretch of tarmac, then into darkness again. Another sign appeared. Airport perimeter, 5 miles. Relief flickered briefly in my chest, but instead of turning towards the brighter, busier lanes, he took an exit that dipped slightly downward. The streetlights thinned, the road narrowed. I felt my shoulders tense. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Not everything unfamiliar is dangerous. Not every quiet moment is a warning. Still, I shifted my bag closer to me and wrapped my fingers around the edge of the seat. The road now ran alongside a high fence topped with metal spikes. Beyond it, darkness. No terminal buildings. No planes. No movement. I looked at Mark again. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed straight ahead. I opened my mouth, then closed it. The car slowed further as we approached a stretch where several streetlights were out. The shadows between them felt thicker, heavier. My phone vibrated suddenly in my hand. I jumped, my heart racing, only to see a notification from a news app. Not Oliver. I swallowed and placed the phone back on my lap. Ahead of us, I could see the glow of the airport lights in the distance. Bright, busy, alive. But we were not heading straight towards them. We were moving parallel, keeping them at a distance. That was when the first clear thought settled in my mind, quiet and unwelcome. This is not the way I expected to go. I did not know why. I could not have explained it, but something had shifted. Not enough to panic, not enough to act. Just enough to make me sit very still and listen to my own heartbeat, counting each one as the car carried me deeper into a place that felt wrong, without ever saying so out loud. The car slowed almost to a crawl. I felt it before I understood it. The subtle change in momentum, the way my body leaned forward slightly, as if preparing for a stop. We were no longer moving alongside the glow of the airport. We were drifting away from it. Mark guided the car into a narrow lane, bordered by concrete barriers on one side and a tall fence on the other. The fence cast long shadows that stretched across the road like bars. There were no other cars, no pedestrians, no security vehicles, just us. The car came to a complete stop beside a wide concrete column, one of many holding up an overpass above us. The engine stayed on. For a second, I thought perhaps this was a temporary pause, a wrong turn, a moment to reorient. I reached for the door handle. It did not move. I tried again, harder this time. Nothing. A sharp wave of heat rushed through my chest. My fingers curled around the handle, pulling with more force than I meant to. Still, nothing. I looked up. Mark's hands were gripping the steering wheel. His knuckles were white, his shoulders rigid. The locks had been engaged from the front. "Please," I said, my voice higher than I expected. "There must be a mistake. I just need to get inside." He did not answer. I twisted in my seat and tried the other door. Locked. The windows. I pressed my palm against the glass and looked out. Darkness. Empty pavement. A stretch of concrete disappearing into shadow. There was no one to see me, no one to hear me. My breathing became shallow, fast. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "I have money. I can pay you." The words tumbled out of me, unplanned and desperate. Still, he did not turn around. I began to cry, not loudly, not yet. The kind of crying that comes from confusion rather than terror. The kind that believes there is still a misunderstanding to be cleared up. "Please," I said again, "I'm just trying to help my husband." That was when Mark spoke. "You cannot get out here," he said quietly. "Not now." Something in his voice stopped me. It was not threatening, it was strained, almost frightened. I pressed my back against the seat and wrapped my arms around myself. My heart was pounding so hard, it felt as if it might bruise my ribs from the inside. I glanced at the dashboard clock. 11:58. Midnight. Outside, the wind moved through the empty space beneath the overpass, carrying a low, hollow sound with it. The kind that makes places feel abandoned, even when they are not. "Mark," I said, "you are scaring me." He swallowed. I could see the movement in his throat through the mirror. "You need to listen to me," he said. "Do not open the door. Do not shout. Do not wave at anyone if you see them." My stomach dropped. "If you trust me," he continued, "you will be safe, but you have to stay still." Safe. The word felt absurd in my mouth. I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. "This is not safe," I said. "You have locked me in your car." "I know," he replied, "and I am sorry." Sorry. That was worse. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass and squeezed my eyes shut. I thought of Oliver, of our quiet house, of the way I had stepped out into the night without telling anyone where I was going. I tried to call him again. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my phone. No answer. I opened my mouth to scream, then stopped. Something held me back. Not logic, not trust. Instinct. A sense that noise would make things worse, not better. Minutes dragged by. Every sound outside made my muscles tighten. A distant engine. Footsteps that turned out to be nothing. The wind again. I felt exposed, pinned, like an animal that knows it has been seen but cannot see what is watching it. "How long?" I whispered. Mark did not look at me. "Not long now," he said. "Just a few more minutes." I stared at the dark space beside the car, the exact place where I would have stepped out if the door had opened. That was when I realized something that made my skin prickle. This was not random. We had stopped here for a reason. Before we go any further, I want you to do something simple. If you are still listening, take a slow breath with me. Just one. Because once you understand what was waiting outside that door, you will realize why this was the moment I stopped being in control of my own life. Time stopped behaving normally. That was the first thing I noticed. The seconds on the dashboard clock continued to move, but my body did not believe them. Each minute felt stretched, thinned out, as if someone had pulled it apart carefully and left me inside it. 11:59. Minute was 1 minute away. I sat perfectly still in the back seat, not because I was calm, but because I did not know which movement might make things worse. My hands rested on my lap, fingers locked together so tightly that they began to ache. The wallet lay between them, forgotten now, reduced to weight and shape. Outside, nothing changed. No footsteps, no voices, no sudden movement, just the empty space beside the car, dark and open, as if waiting. Mark did not move either. His eyes remained fixed ahead. His breathing was slow, measured, deliberate. It felt rehearsed, as if he were counting along with the clock in his head. Midnight. The date on the dashboard flicked over. A new day began, quietly, without ceremony. I thought of how many people were asleep at that exact moment, in beds, on sofas, in hotel rooms near the terminal, all unaware that a woman was sitting beneath an overpass, locked inside a car, waiting for something she did not understand. My phone vibrated again. I flinched before I could stop myself. Another notification. Weather update. Nothing important. I turned the screen face down and pressed it against my thigh, as if that could stop time from passing. 1 minute, then another. I became acutely aware of my own body, the tightness in my chest, the dry taste in my mouth, the faint tremor running through my legs, despite my efforts to stay still. I wanted to ask questions, 1,000 of them. Who? Why? What? But none of them came out. Some instinct told me that answers were not what I was meant to receive yet. Mark spoke once without looking at me. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "you must not open the door." Whatever happens. The phrase settled heavily in the air. I stared at the dark space outside the window again. I tried to imagine what could possibly be worse than this waiting. Another minute passed. The silence began to press against my ears, thick and suffocating. I could hear my own heartbeat now, slow, loud. I counted it, the way you count seconds when you are trying not to panic. 10 beats, then 10 more. My thoughts drifted, uninvited, to small things. The mug I had left by the sink, the light I had forgotten to turn off upstairs, the front door locked behind me. I wondered suddenly how long it would take for someone to notice I was gone. 2 minutes. 3. Mark's jaw tightened. I saw it in the mirror. He shifted his grip on the steering wheel, then stilled again. The engine continued to hum, low and steady. A reminder that we could leave at any moment. And yet, we did not. The waiting felt deliberate now, structured, as if this place and this moment had been chosen carefully. I tried to remember how many minutes he had said. 5. 5 minutes. I counted back. Had 1 passed? Had 2? Time blurred. My breathing slowed, not because I was calmer, but because my body seemed to be conserving itself, preparing. 4 minutes. A sound reached me then, faint, almost nothing. A scuff, like a shoe against concrete. I froze. My eyes flicked to Mark's reflection. He had heard it too. His shoulders stiffened, his breathing changed. "Do not move." The words echoed in my head, though he had not said them out loud. Another sound, closer this time. I pressed my back harder into the seat, as if I could merge with it, as if becoming smaller would make me invisible. The door handle beside me caught a sliver of light from a distant lamp. I could see it clearly, the shape, the curve. I imagined a hand reaching for it. My stomach turned violently. 5 minutes. I did not know what I was waiting for. I only knew that the waiting itself was the most terrifying thing I had ever experienced. Because when you are forced to stay still, when you are given time to imagine every possible ending, fear has room to grow, and it grows quickly. The sound came suddenly, not loud, not dramatic, just a sharp burst of noise that cut cleanly through the silence. Blue light flooded the space beneath the overpass, then red, then blue again. For half a second, my mind could not make sense of it. The colours felt unreal, like something from a dream breaking into the dark. Then I heard it. Sirens. Not distant, not approaching, right there. Mark's shoulders dropped slightly, as if he had been holding his breath for too long. His hands loosened on the steering wheel. "Do not move," he said. But this time his voice sounded different, steady, certain. The sirens grew louder, bouncing off concrete, filling every empty corner around us. I saw shadows move across the ground, quick, purposeful. A voice shouted something I could not hear clearly, then another. The driver's door opened, cold air rushed in. I flinched, instinctively pressing myself back against the seat. "Police!" someone called out. "Stay where you are!" My chest tightened. Police. I did not know whether that was good or bad yet. I turned my head just in time to see figures running past the car. Dark uniforms, reflective strips flashing under the lights. They did not come towards me, they ran past, straight towards the dark space beside the concrete column, the exact place I had been staring at for the last 5 minutes. There was shouting, footsteps, a sudden crash of bodies against concrete. A man appeared briefly in the edge of my vision, then disappeared beneath 2 officers. Something metallic skidded across the ground. It stopped near the front wheel of the car. A knife. I stared at it, my brain slow to respond. The shape, the shine, the way it lay there, ordinary and horrifying at the same time. Another officer bent down and picked up a cloth from the ground. He held it away from his body. Even from where I sat, I could see the dark stain on it. "Chloroform," someone said. The word hit me harder than the sirens. My stomach turned violently. I clamped a hand over my mouth, fighting the urge to retch. That man had not been waiting randomly. He had been waiting for me. Mark opened his door fully and stepped out, raising his hands slowly, not in surrender, in recognition. One of the officers nodded at him. "You did the right thing," the officer said. "We got here just in time." Just in time. The phrase echoed in my head, hollow and heavy. The back door opened. A female officer crouched beside me, her face level with mine. Her voice was calm, practiced. "You are safe now," she said. "You can come out." Safe. For the first time, the word did not feel like a lie. My legs did not want to move. They felt weak, disconnected. The officer waited. She did not rush me. When I finally stepped out of the car, the cold air hit my face like a slap. My knees buckled slightly. She caught my arm before I could fall. I looked around, dazed. The overpass no longer felt empty. It was full of movement. Police cars, officers, radios crackling. The man who had been hiding was now on the ground, hands cuffed behind his back. His face was pressed into the concrete. I could not see his eyes. I did not want to. I turned back to the car, to Mark. Confusion washed over me, fast and sharp. "You locked me in," I said. My voice sounded distant, even to my own ears. "I thought you were hurting me." Mark met my eyes. "I was keeping you alive," he said quietly. One of the officers stepped closer. "You are Emily Carter," he said. I nodded. "We had information that someone was planning to abduct you tonight," he continued. "The suspect was already in position when we arrived." My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Abduct me? I thought of the knife, the cloth, the exact place the man had been standing. If the door had opened, if I had stepped out. My hands began to shake violently. The officer placed a blanket around my shoulders. I looked at Mark again, really looked at him. "You knew," I said. "You knew someone was there." He nodded once. "I received a call earlier this evening," he said. "A warning, very specific." "A warning from who?" I asked. He hesitated. "Someone who wanted you protected," he said. Nothing about this made sense, and yet every piece of it felt horrifyingly real. Before I tell you what that warning was and who made that call, I want you to pause with me for a moment. If you are still listening, if you want to understand how a stranger became my shield while the people closest to me were about to betray me, comment the number 1 right now. Because what happened next was not relief. It was shock. I was still wrapped in the police blanket when I saw him. At first, my mind refused to recognize the shape. A familiar outline does not always register as familiar when it appears in the wrong place. He stood beyond the cordon tape, under the harsh white lights, speaking to an officer. Tall, straight-backed, composed. Oliver, my husband. For a moment, something inside me relaxed, a foolish, automatic response. The relief of seeing a known face after fear. I took a step forward. Then he turned his head. He did not rush to me. He did not call my name. He did not look relieved. He looked irritated, as if the evening had been inconvenienced. I stopped walking. The officer beside me said something softly, asking if I was all right. I nodded without hearing him. Oliver finished his sentence, nodded once, and walked towards me at an unhurried pace, the way he always walked, measured, controlled. "Emily," he said, "there you are." There was no tremor in his voice, no shock, no fear. "You should not have come out so late," he continued. "This whole thing is very unfortunate." Unfortunate. That was the word he chose. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. My thoughts felt thick, slow, as if moving through syrup. Before I could speak, someone stepped into view behind him. Lucy, my best friend. We had met at university, shared flats, shared secrets, shared the kind of friendship people call chosen family. She was wrapped in a light coat, her hair pulled back neatly. Her makeup was careful, her expression tight. When our eyes met, she looked away first. Something cracked then, quietly, deep inside my chest. The world seemed to narrow, shrinking to the 3 of us standing beneath those lights. "You are here too," I said. The words sounded flat, observational. Lucy folded her arms. She did not step forward. She did not apologize. "I came with Oliver," she said. "He asked me to." He asked me to. I looked back at my husband. He avoided my eyes now, focusing instead on the officer nearby. "This has all been taken out of context," he said. "No one was hurt." I felt heat rise up my neck. My hands began to shake again, this time not from fear. "No one was hurt," I repeated. "Someone was waiting in the dark with a knife." Oliver sighed, a familiar sound, the one he used when bills arrived late or plans changed unexpectedly. "That was never meant to happen," he said. "Things got complicated." Complicated. Lucy finally looked at me. Her gaze was steady now, almost challenging. "You are overreacting," she said. "You always do when you do not have the full picture." Overreacting. I laughed, a short, broken sound that surprised even me. "The full picture," I said. "Is that what you call this?" I gestured helplessly at the scene around us. The police, the tape, the man in handcuffs being led away. Oliver stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You need to calm down," he said. "Making a scene will not help anyone." Not once did he say sorry. Not once did Lucy. The officer cleared his throat, interrupting the moment. "Mr. Carter," he said, "we will need you and Miss Bennett to remain here for questioning." Oliver stiffened. Lucy's jaw tightened. "I have done nothing wrong," Oliver said quickly. "This is a misunderstanding." I watched his face as he spoke, really watched it. The man I had trusted, the man I had defended, the man I had built a quiet life around. There was calculation there, not panic, not guilt. Calculation. Lucy shifted her weight. "This was supposed to be simple," she muttered, barely loud enough to hear. Oliver shot her a warning look. Simple. That word landed harder than any accusation. I suddenly understood something with devastating clarity. This was not a mistake, not an accident, not a moment of madness. This was a plan, one they had discussed, refined, agreed upon, and I was never meant to stand here listening to them explain it. I felt a strange calm settle over me, the kind that arrives when something precious finally breaks. "I trusted you," I said quietly. The words were not a plea, they were a statement. Lucy's lips pressed together. She did not respond. Oliver glanced at his watch, an impatient gesture. "We can talk about this later," he said, "in private." Private, as if I would ever be alone with them again. The officer asked me if I needed medical attention. I shook my head. What I needed did not exist in an ambulance. I looked from my husband to my best friend, the two people who knew my routines, my habits, my kindness, the two people who had used them against me. If you are feeling angry right now, if your chest is tight and your hands are curling into fists as you listen to this, I want you to do something. Press like on this video, not for me, but for every person who has been betrayed by the people they trusted most. Because this was only the beginning, and what I did next would change everything. They did not arrest Oliver that night. That was the first shock after the shock. He and Lucy were questioned, separated, made to wait under the same white lights that had exposed everything else. Then they were allowed to leave. I remember watching Oliver straighten his coat, as if this were a delayed meeting rather than the collapse of his marriage. Lucy walked beside him, her heels clicking softly against the concrete. Neither of them looked back. At the time, I did not understand why. I would later learn that the truth rarely arrives all at once. It comes in pieces, in paper, in numbers, in things you wish you had never seen. The first piece arrived the next morning. I was sitting at my kitchen table, wrapped in a jumper that still smelled faintly of the police blanket, when my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. It was the officer who had spoken to me under the overpass. "There are some items we recovered that belong to your husband," he said. "We believe you should see them." I drove myself this time. Inside the evidence room, everything was laid out neatly. Clear bags, typed labels, order imposed on chaos. The officer slid one folder across the table. "These were found in the suspect's backpack," he said. Inside were 2 airline tickets, one for Oliver, one for Lucy. One way, London to Dubai. Departure time just after dawn. Less than 6 hours after everything had happened. My name was nowhere on them. I stared at the dates, the seat numbers, the payment reference. They had not planned to come back. The officer waited until my breathing steadied before continuing. "There is more." He passed me another folder. Insurance documents. My name at the top, my date of birth, my address. Life insurance. A policy I had never signed. A policy I had never discussed. The beneficiary was listed clearly. Oliver Carter. The amount made my head spin. Enough to erase years of debt. Enough to start over somewhere far away. My hands began to shake. "I did not know about this," I said. My voice sounded flat, distant. "We know," the officer replied. "The signature is not yours." Forgery. The word felt heavy, permanent, as if it had weight. The next pieces came more slowly. Bank statements, credit reports, loan agreements. Oliver's finances were not tidy. They were desperate. Multiple loans, maxed out credit cards, payments shuffled between accounts to hide delays. He had been borrowing to cover borrowing, moving money to make it look like movement. The officer tapped a page with his pen. "Gambling," he said, "high stakes." I closed my eyes. I remembered evenings when Oliver had been distracted, the late nights, the unexplained tension. It had never occurred to me to ask where the money was going. Lucy's name appeared next, not as a lover, as an accomplice. Joint accounts, transfers timed carefully around paydays. Her flat listed as a temporary address on one application. They had been planning together for months. The wallet suddenly made sense. Why it had been heavy. Why it contained documents I had never seen. Why it had been left behind. It was meant to be found. If I had opened it earlier, if I had looked closely at the papers tucked behind the cards, I might have seen the outline of what was coming. But I had trusted. And trust makes you blind in very specific ways. The officer leaned back slightly, giving me space. "The suspect we arrested was hired," he said. "Cash payment, no names." Hired, as if my life were a service, as if I were an obstacle to be removed. "He was told to wait for a woman matching your description," the officer continued. "She would exit a vehicle alone. He was to act quickly." My stomach clenched. If I had stepped out of the car, if Mark had not locked the doors. The plan had been simple, too simple. A disappearance, a delayed report, a grieving husband with the paperwork already prepared. No divorce, no questions, just sympathy. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not fear this time, understanding. Oliver had not wanted to leave me. He had wanted to replace me with money. I asked the officer one final question. "Why tell me all of this now?" He met my eyes. "Because people like your husband do not panic when they think they are smarter than everyone else," he said. "They make mistakes when they think the danger has passed." As I left the station, the weight of the evidence followed me. Not physically, emotionally. Tickets, insurance, debt. A story written in numbers rather than words. If you are listening to this and your heart feels heavy, I want you to do something unexpected. Pause the video for a second. Just one. Because the next part of this story is not about what they planned to do to me. It is about what I decided to do with the truth they left behind. I did not cry when I got home. That surprised me. I expected tears to arrive the moment I closed the front door. I expected my body to collapse under the weight of everything I had learned. Instead, there was only quiet. I took off my coat. I placed my keys on the small dish by the door. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were steady. I drank slowly, standing by the sink, looking out at the dark garden. The same garden Oliver and I had stood in so many evenings, talking about nothing important. It felt like another life, one that had already ended. That night, I did not sleep much, but I did not lie awake shaking either. I lay still, staring at the ceiling, letting thoughts come and go without chasing them. Every time an image threatened to pull me under, I let it pass. Knife, tickets, Lucy's face, Oliver's voice. I told myself one thing over and over: crying will not save you. In the morning, I woke early, earlier than usual. I made tea. I opened the curtains. I answered emails that had been waiting. I did not call Oliver. I did not text Lucy. I did not confront anyone. Silence felt safer. It also felt powerful. I realized something important as the hours passed. No one was rushing me. No one was demanding explanations. Oliver believed the danger had passed. Lucy believed I was still in shock. They thought I would react the way I always had, quietly, politely, by giving them space. So I let them believe it. I began to observe. I watched the timing of messages, the way Oliver's name appeared on shared accounts, the small changes in routine I had once ignored. When he finally called that evening, I let it ring. When he sent a message saying, "We need to talk," I did not reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and began to read. Bank statements, insurance documents, emails I had once skimmed without interest. I noticed patterns now, dates lining up, amounts repeating, gaps where money had moved and returned, like footprints covered quickly. I remembered conversations differently too. The times Oliver had asked whether I had updated my details at work. The casual questions about beneficiaries. The jokes about how organized Lucy was with paperwork. They were not jokes. They were checks. I stopped blaming myself for not seeing it sooner. That path led nowhere useful. Instead, I asked better questions. What did they think I knew? What did they think I would do? What mistake would they make if they thought they were safe? I wrote nothing down. I left no trail. I spoke normally to friends. I went to work. I replied to messages with neutral politeness. I became exactly what they expected. A woman processing shock slowly. A wife too hurt to act. Inside, something else was happening. The part of me that had trusted without question was gone. Not wounded, gone. In its place was a calm focus I had never felt before. I stopped imagining confrontations. I stopped rehearsing arguments. Those were for people who wanted closure. I wanted clarity. One afternoon, as I sat at the same kitchen table where I had first heard about the evidence, I realized something else. They needed me to react. Guilt needed forgiveness. Fear needed reassurance. But indifference needed nothing. So I chose indifference. I let days pass, then a week. Oliver grew restless. I could hear it in his messages, shorter, sharper, less patient. Lucy tried once, a carefully worded text asking how I was feeling. I left it unread. Silence, I learned, makes people careless. If you are listening to this and you feel the pace slow down, that is intentional. This was the pause before everything changed. Before I go on, I want you to do something simple. If you have ever reached a moment in your life where you stopped reacting and started thinking, comment the number 1. Because the moment you stop being emotional is the moment you become dangerous to people who underestimated you. And that was the moment the old version of me finally disappeared. I did not confront them. That was the first move. People expect confrontation when guilt is fresh. They prepare for tears, for shouting, for accusations thrown like stones. I gave them none of that. Instead, I listened. It began with small things, ordinary moments that would have meant nothing before. Oliver pacing while on the phone in the spare room. Lucy's name lighting up my screen and disappearing again before the call connected. The careful timing of messages that arrived late at night when they thought I would be asleep. I paid attention. I learned how fear sounds when it tries to hide behind confidence. I learned how lies change shape when repeated too often. One afternoon, Oliver came by the house unannounced. He said he wanted to collect some documents. He stood in the doorway as if he still belonged there. "You are being very quiet," he said. "It worries me." I smiled, a small, tired smile. "I am just trying to process everything," I said. "It takes time." He nodded, relieved. That was the first mistake. From then on, I gave him exactly what he needed to hear. Never enough to reassure him fully, just enough to keep him talking. I asked careful questions, questions that sounded harmless. Did the police say when they would finish their investigation? Will this affect your work? Do you think Lucy is coping with all of this? Each question landed softly. Each answer revealed something new. At night, when the house was quiet, I replayed conversations in my head, not the words, the pauses, the hesitations, the moments when Oliver corrected himself too quickly. Lucy was harder. She was cautious in a way Oliver was not. She avoided me in person, kept communication brief, neutral. So I changed my approach. I sent her a message one evening, not angry, not accusing. "I keep thinking about what you said that night," I wrote, "about things getting complicated. I feel like I never understood you properly." She replied an hour later. "I did not mean it the way it sounded," she said. "You know that." I waited before responding, letting the silence do its work. "What did you mean then?" I asked. Her reply took longer this time. "I just meant that Oliver was under a lot of pressure," she wrote. "He made some bad choices." Bad choices. I could feel her testing the ground, seeing how far she could go. I decided to help her. "I wish I had noticed sooner," I wrote. "Maybe I could have stopped him." That was the second mistake. Once they believed I blamed myself, they relaxed. Fear loosened its grip. Oliver started calling more often. Lucy stopped editing her messages so carefully. I did not need to push. They did that for me. One evening, Oliver arrived looking agitated. He did not bother with small talk. "They are asking questions at work," he said. "It is nothing serious, but it is annoying." I poured tea, listened. "They would not do that without reason," I said gently. "Do you think they know about the debts?" His cup froze halfway to his mouth. "What debts?" he asked. I looked confused, genuinely confused. "Oh," I said, "I thought you had told them already." He laughed too quickly, too loudly. "You always imagine the worst," he said. That laugh told me everything. Lucy called later that night. Her voice was tight. "Have you spoken to anyone about the insurance?" she asked. I let the question hang in the air. "Why would I said. Another pause, longer this time. "I just meant," she said slowly, "sometimes people misunderstand paperwork." Paperwork. The words scraped against my nerves. I realized then that they were no longer talking to each other as freely. Fear was beginning to separate them. I leaned into that gap. I mentioned Oliver's name casually when speaking to Lucy. I mentioned Lucy when speaking to Oliver. Never directly, always indirectly, always as if I assumed honesty. "Lucy seems very stressed," I told Oliver. "She worries you might say something by accident." He stared at me. "What would I say?" he asked. I shrugged. People talk when they are tired. The silence that followed was heavy. Lucy accused Oliver of being careless. Oliver accused Lucy of panicking. I did not hear the arguments directly. I heard the echoes. The tension carried into every interaction. They were watching each other now, listening for slips, counting words. I became invisible. That was when they started making mistakes. Oliver forwarded me an email by accident, then claimed it was intentional. Lucy contradicted him without realizing. Dates did not match. Stories shifted. One night, Oliver said something he could not take back. "If you had not gone to the airport," he said, frustration breaking through, "none of this would have happened." The room went very still. "I thought you said it was all a misunderstanding," I replied quietly. He did not answer. That was the moment I knew, not suspected, knew. I did not feel triumph, I felt clarity. The truth was no longer something I needed to chase. It was coming to me, piece by piece, carried by their fear. If you are listening to this and your chest feels tight, if you feel the tension building rather than releasing, that is because this was the point of no return. This was the moment when they realized I was no longer reacting, I was directing. And once fear turns inward, people destroy themselves far more efficiently than any enemy ever could. They thought they had won. That was the final mistake. By then, weeks had passed. The police investigation had slowed, at least on the surface. No arrests, no headlines, no sudden knocks on the door. Oliver relaxed. Lucy followed. Fear had done its job, and now complacency had taken over. Oliver began talking again, not carefully, not defensively, but with the loose confidence of someone who believes the danger is behind him. "They have nothing," he said one evening, "just theories." I nodded, said nothing. Let him believe it. Lucy stopped avoiding me. She even smiled once, thin and cautious, when we crossed paths at a mutual friend's gathering. "You look better," she said, "stronger." I thanked her. Inside, I was counting. The trap did not look like a trap. That was the point. It looked like closure. I told Oliver I was ready to talk. Really talk. No accusations, no lawyers, just honesty. He agreed immediately, too quickly. We met in a small conference room at his office building, neutral ground, glass walls, a long table, a jug of water. Lucy was there too. Oliver said it would help clear the air. Of course she was. They sat across from me, close enough that their knees almost touched. A familiar posture, united. "I want this to end quietly," I said. "I do not want a scandal." Oliver exhaled in relief. Lucy's shoulders dropped. "That is sensible," Oliver said. "Very sensible." I reached into my bag and placed my phone on the table, screen down. "I just need to understand everything," I continued, "from the beginning." They exchanged a glance. Lucy spoke first, carefully. "Oliver was under pressure," she said. "He made bad decisions." Oliver nodded, eager now. "I never meant for you to get hurt," he said. "It just got out of control." Out of control. I leaned forward slightly. "So the tickets were your idea?" I asked Lucy. She hesitated, just a second too long. "We planned them together," she said, "after everything settled." "And the insurance?" I asked. "That was also part of the plan?" Oliver answered this time. "It was a precaution," he said, "in case something happened." Something happened. I let the words sit. "So if I had not gone to the airport," I said slowly, "you would have left anyway." Oliver smiled, a small, confident smile. "Eventually," he said, "yes." That smile sealed it. I turned my phone over. The screen lit up. A red recording icon glowed quietly in the corner. Lucy's face drained of colour. "What is that?" she asked. A record, I said, of everything you have just said. Oliver laughed. Too late. You cannot use that, he said. It is illegal. I looked past him to the glass wall behind. 3 people were standing there, watching. The officer who had spoken to me under the overpass, a financial investigator, a solicitor. The door opened. Oliver stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. This is a setup, he said. You tricked us. I did not raise my voice. You confessed, I said. I only listened. Lucy began to cry, not softly, not convincingly. It was his idea, she said. He told me it was the only way. Oliver turned on her instantly. You agreed, he snapped. You took the money. The officer stepped forward. Mr. Carter, he said, you are under arrest on suspicion of conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and forgery. The words hung in the air. Lucy sobbed harder. The investigator placed documents on the table, printed transcripts, bank transfers, phone records. Your conversations were already monitored, she said. This meeting confirmed intent. Oliver's confidence collapsed in real time. His face sagged, his hands shook. As they led him away, he looked back at me. For the first time, there was fear. You planned this, he said. I met his gaze. You planned my death, I replied. I planned the truth. Lucy was taken next. She did not look at me. The room emptied. The glass walls reflected only my own image now. I sat down, suddenly exhausted. The solicitor asked if I was all right. I nodded. Justice is not loud. It does not shout or celebrate. It arrives quietly, in handcuffs, in paperwork, in the end of lies. Before I finish this story, I want you to do one small thing. If you believe that silence, patience, and clarity can be more powerful than anger, comment the letter J. Because the final part is not about revenge. It is about what happens after justice. I went back to the airport alone, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. It was early morning again, the same hour, the same grey light spreading slowly across the sky. People moved through the terminal with quiet purpose, rolling suitcases, coffee cups, half-awake conversations. No one noticed me, and that felt right. I stood near the entrance for a moment, breathing in the familiar smell of metal and floor cleaner. Weeks ago, this place had been the edge of my life, a place where everything could have ended. Now it was just a building. I did not feel fear. I did not feel anger. I felt distance. I walked past the spot where I had once stood clutching my phone, waiting for someone who never came. The memory no longer pulled at me. It hovered, then settled. Some things lose their power when you stop returning to them. The case moved forward without me needing to push. There were hearings, paperwork, statements taken and retaken. I attended only what was necessary. I let professionals do their work. Justice unfolded the way it usually does, slowly, quietly, without drama. People asked me how I felt, friends, colleagues, even strangers who had heard fragments of the story. I learned to answer honestly. I'm all right, I would say, and I meant it. Recovery did not look the way I had imagined. There was no moment of triumph, no sudden happiness. There was space, space where panic used to live, space where constant explanation had once been required. I moved through my days differently, more deliberately, less apologetically. I stopped replaying conversations in my head, stopped wondering how things might have gone if I had said something sooner. That version of me belonged to another time. I redecorated the spare room, not because it needed changing, but because I did. I gave away clothes that no longer felt like mine. I kept the ones that did. I cooked meals just for myself, simple ones, enjoyed the quiet while they simmered. Freedom, I learned, is often very ordinary. It does not announce itself. It arrives quietly, then stays. I did not feel the need to forgive Oliver or Lucy. Forgiveness implies a debt, an exchange. I owed them nothing. What I felt instead was release. They no longer occupied space in my thoughts. Their names became facts rather than wounds. One evening, I received a message from a number I did not recognize. It was Mark, the driver. He wrote simply, "I hope you are doing well." I replied, "I am. Thank you for that night." He did not respond again, and that was fine. Some people enter your life only to keep you alive long enough to walk away on your own. On the anniversary of the night everything changed, I took a walk through my neighborhood. The same streets, the same houses, nothing looked different, and yet everything was. I passed the cafe where Oliver and I used to sit on Sundays. I did not stop. I did not need to. I kept walking. I realized then that the opposite of revenge is not forgiveness. It is indifference. Not coldness, not bitterness, just the absence of weight. I had survived something that was meant to erase me, and in doing so, I had learned something important. Silence can be a shield. Patience can be a weapon, and clarity is the sharpest edge of all. If you are listening to this and you find yourself thinking about a moment in your own life where you chose not to fight loudly, but to step away quietly, I want to leave you with a question. Do you believe that walking away can sometimes be the strongest ending of all? You do not need to answer now, just sit with it, and when you are ready, I will be here to listen.